Oh my God. Happy New Year, everybody. Did you have a good year? Hope so. We got Dustin on the pod.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop. Kiki is off with Forrest Whitaker.
Yes, working.
Mm-hmm. Work. She's dressing for Forrest Whitaker on a new show. I don't know the name of it.
Oh.
I don't think she met him yet, but I think she's either supposed to meet him today or tomorrow. But yeah, so Kira.
I'm curious to hear all the stories.
I know. Kira got tea all the time. Not about Forrest Whitaker, but just in general.
Just in general.
And then we got the lunatic is in the house. Bark if you're nasty. Arf. So this is season 2, episode 5. Welcome to I Swear to Drunk I'm Not God.
Wow, season 2, episode 5.
Look at me.
Pushing through.
15 episodes left. I don't even know. One day I will shift over to the old video. I'm working on it.
We'll get there.
You know, I think it'll be fun. I'm getting ideas from like people on just seeing the formats that people are using. Something that I feel like I can do that I won't need a bunch of people to help me do. You know what I'm saying? Because then you got to coordinate. Then people want to get paid. Then you got to schedule. I'm not doing
and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's like I'm kind of a one-woman show when I don't have a co-host.
Yeah.
And
then adding a videographer.
No. And then, I got to go work. My car ain't working. I ain't got time for none of it. Like, I hate to say this, but I got trust issues in that regard from film school.
No, that makes sense. I mean, group projects.
Yeah. And because I work in the television industry where we pay people handsomely, I know that the only way you can truly rely on anybody is when you're giving them like $3,000 a week. Like,
that totally makes sense.
You know?
Especially everybody you know has a job.
Mm-hmm.
So then it would have to be, after work.
Yeah.
And while they might be dedicated to do it at that moment.
Well, but look at Kira. Like, Kira likes to do this, but she's a set person.
There's that, yeah.
And thank you because you were able to do this very last minute. My mom was the one who told me. She was like, Kira starts work tomorrow. I was like, what?
Kira?
What do you? But she has been working. She's been working a lot. She was doing theater.
She was doing Hamilton for a while, right?
She was doing Hamilton. She was just working. So then, like, as soon as her Broadway and Chicago job ended, she went right on to this show. Hey. She's never done. She's Jamaican. I always call Kira like, hey, man. I don't know if you remember that in Living Color skit where like they had 15 jobs.
Oh, yes.
It was like Damon Wayans and he would like, I have 15 jobs. He was like, I'm the plumber. I'm the this. And he would like name every. That's Kira. That's literally Kira. Like she's never not working. Hustle all day. So, but we're here and we're queer. No, I'm not queer.
Well, I am.
But Dustin is. Luna's here. She what?
She might be.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, giving her, because she's a wild one, okay? She wants to get on the floor, I think. She is a whole ass Gemini. And when I say when I say Luna is an insane dog, she has been kicking me and my mother's ass. You hear me? Between like her and not knowing what the fuck she wants. She's like, what does she want? Does she want to go? She's like, look, I'm over here now. Okay, come up. Come on, baby. Come up with me.
I think she's sleepy, like you said.
She is. And sometimes too, like hold on.
So Brittany's picking the doggy up. She's picking Luna up. So we're taking a brief little there we go.
Why does it feel like Best in Show? She's picking the dog up. The dog is beautiful. It is a cute beige.
She's so adorable.
She's so fucking cute. Her tear stains are stupid right now, but that's puppy life for you. Because they just, she has allergies and one, she just cries for no reason, but they'll go away eventually. You want to sit with me, baby bear? Okay. All right. So who are we talking about today? We're talking about motherfucking Ed Gein.
Exciting.
The original Psycho. Look.
So I don't know a lot about him, but I'm excited to learn even more.
Look. Excuse me. All I got to say is this. Ed Gein was a wild boy. Okay. And when I say queer.
Okay.
Okay. He was. Now, with that being said, I would also like to say, go watch Psycho. If you've never seen Psycho, please go watch Psycho.
How could you
Alfred,
never seen Psycho?
Some people haven't. You know, what's crazy? There was a period where I went and I watched the sequels. Because I don't know if you know, like, so my uncle, Anthony Perkins, who isn't my uncle, but we share the same last name. But I joke because,
that's your uncle's name.
so you know that big, so I have a big picture of John Coltrane in my living room.
Right.
Behind that picture is a giant picture of Norman Bates with the taxidermy owl behind him. Because in my Hyde Park apartment, I don't know if you remember, I had all those movie posters.
Okay, I remember the movie posters.
Which are in storage. And then, but I had my big ones. I had Marlon Brando, Orson Welles. And then I realized that everybody on my wall was white. And that's no disrespect to white people. It was just that I was like, why do I not have any black people on my fucking wall? And so because of my love for jazz, when I transitioned into this apartment, I said, you know what? We're going to make this one a jazz vibe.
Okay.
So I took all of, except the 3 horror posters that I have in my hallway, which are Shadow of a Doubt. They all Hitchcock.
Okay, right.
Those in the hallway. Everything else, Nina Simone, Billie Holiday, Miles Davis, it's all music in the living room. Yeah. So, except over the TV is Carmen Jones. Okay. That's the only kind of film. Oh, and then the second bedroom has 2 horror film posters that my ex-boyfriend Steve bought me or gave me from the show we did in Savannah.
Okay.
So, but anyway, I'm saying that to say, I fucking love Psycho. Like, I didn't like Psycho until, I want to say, I moved to Hyde Park.
Okay.
I know.
I'm actually shocked. Though.
I know. Because that wasn't my favorite. My favorite was Birds.
Oh.
It wasn't. And then Rear Window.
Birds is crazy.
So when it comes to
Hitchcock. I don't know if
Hitchcock.
I've ever seen Rear Window.
Oh my God. You need to watch Rear Window.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen
Have you ever seen Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf?
Yes.
That's Rear Window.
Oh, okay.
But they reimagined it. But
what are we drinking?
We're drinking the Lemon-Lavender Gin Fizz. Okay, so what's funky about this one, and it kind of, when you say it, kind of feels like it should be like a lemon drop minus the fizz or plus fizz, but this actually has Peychaud bitters in it. So it's lavender bitters, simple syrup, lemon juice, Peychaud bitters, and gin. And then you put them in a cocktail shaker, shake them up, and then you pour them over ice. Shh. Don't start. So, but that's what we're drinking. And then I put some in ours, because it's the fizz, you're technically supposed to put, like the little effervescent things in them. I didn't have that, so I put in a little bit of sparkling lime water.
Oh, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we're drinking. But no, what I was saying is when it comes to Alfred Hitchcock, Rear Window was always my shit. Birds was always my shit. And then I was like, you know what, Brittany, you saw Psycho in film school. You wasn't really that crazy about it. Watch it again. So I watched it again. And I watched it again. And I watched it again. And I was like, I really like this movie.
The movie's good.
I've
never seen the sequels.
It's really, and to be totally honest, the second one ain't half bad either.
Okay, I'm have to.
Yeah, Anthony Perkins. I think. Yeah, for sure. Oh my God, 100%. Because Anthony Perkins, if I'm not mistaken, is in the first 2 sequels. I think he's in the second and third. R.I.P. to Anthony Perkins. Huh?
How many sequels are there?
There's like 5. There's a Psycho 5. He may be in the 4th one because there's one where he's older because he died of AIDS like in the 80s, I think. Oh, you didn't know Anthony Perkins was gay?
No.
As 4 o'clock, he was gay.
I mean, my gaydar with celebrities is like, I didn't know, Uncle Phil was gay.
Uncle Phil who?
Like from Will Smith, like
Fresh Prince of
Bel-Air.
Oh, I didn't know he was gay at all.
Yeah,
I didn't know that at all.
Went over my head. Kyle from Living Single.
He's gay?
Yes.
You know what's crazy about Kyle is I assumed he was metrosexual. I didn't necessarily think he was actually gay. No. Which is funny because me and my mom were just watching on Christmas. We watched The Final Destinations, which is apparently
he's in there.
Which is apparently what you do for Christmas. I don't know. I didn't watch nearly as many Christmas movies as I thought. I literally watched horror films the whole time.
Oh, see, I think I watched every Christmas rom-com that's ever been made that you never even knew existed.
Okay, I could believe that because you're a fairy tale dude.
It just was great. Like,
I know.
I mean, The Stray Dog, Cooking for Christmas. I mean, so many black
Finding
rom-coms.
Love in the Woods.
But there were so many black ones. Like, I went into this algorithm on Hulu.
Yeah. You know what my favorite one is? The Advent calendar one. Oh, you mind?
No, not at all.
I think she wants to leave. Luna, we're locked in my room, and Luna wants to leave to be with my mom. Thank God. I ain't even gonna lie. But anyway, while Dustin's doing that, you should go and see the Advent calendar. So what I was saying was the Advent calendar one with Quincy Brown. I think it's Christmas something.
It's kind of newer. It's like 2018, 2019-ish.
Super cute. Super cute. That one's cute. And the one with Romany Malco, the radio station one on Netflix, holiday something. That one was good too.
That sounds familiar.
I'll send it to you because I can't remember, but that has nothing to do with Ed Gein. No. But Ed Gein was interesting, so it's gonna be interesting talking about him. But what I was saying too is just go and watch Psycho. He inspired Psycho. He inspired Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is one of those movies that I've always said like I just don't need to see again. It's, it's one of those vibes, and I've seen some disturbing shit. It kind of reminds me of Last House on the Left. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, the original Last House on the Left. It's like, yeah, I'm good. There are just some where you're like, or like Cannibal Holocaust. It's like, I already saw it. I tested my limits with that. Do I need to watch you butcher a turtle again? Probably not.
That's how I feel about Human Centipede.
Yeah. Oh, you know what's weird about Human Centipede? And I always tell this story because I just think it's kind of funny. I was in Venice, Italy, right? And I remember at the time, who was I dating? No, I was, whatever, that doesn't matter. But I was dating somebody. So I'm like in the bed late at night texting them and literally watched all 3 Human Centipedes.
Oh, I've never seen it.
So now every time I think of Human Centipede, I think of Venice, Italy, which I don't think that's what the Venetian people wanted at all. But I enjoyed it. I didn't hate Human Centipede, any of them.
I only saw the first one. I didn't hate it. I don't necessarily ever need to see it again.
I like exploring Disturbia.
It was interesting. Mm-hmm.
It's completely unnecessary.
Yeah,
when I think of certain movies, especially when people ask me, like when I was going through my Halloween phase, and like I was getting a lot of comments from people, and people were like, "What are you watching?" And I'm like, I don't know why I watched this shit. Like, to be totally honest, there are some things that it's almost like exercising, like where it's like, I know I can't pick up this 50-pound weight, but I'm gonna try it for two reps.
I'm gonna try.
I'm gonna just see. And I feel like with testing my limits with like disturbing cinema, it's made it easier to watch commercial horrors. Because now my tolerance is high.
So much higher.
Yeah. It's like if you drink cheap wine all the time, and then all of a sudden somebody gives you a fine whiskey, you probably gonna get wasted. Versus like, but now your palate over time, your palate starts to change. So for me, like I'll watch a regular horror movie and be like, wow.
I mean, I don't think there's any real horror movies now that I haven't seen anything in a long time that's a commercial horror that I'm like, oh my God, this is. But I used to also pray for nightmares when I was a kid, so there's that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because nothing really would ever scare me enough. I mean, I've sat and watched, like, my mom would, like, tell me, like, nope, you would sit and watch, like, horror movies all the time.
But you a roll off your back ass nigga, though, which I think that a lot of people, like, just aren't, like, you don't hold on to anxiety like that. At least you don't show it.
I don't.
And I think that could be why you didn't find so many things scary, because you're like, what the fuck is this? And then you kind of you could just move on from it.
Yeah, no, I think that could definitely be it. Like, nothing really, people are like, oh, this, like, people will tell you, like, there's nothing that's like, oh my God, that's so traumatic.
Yeah.
And like, nothing resonates. I don't have anything in my life that I'm like, oh my God, no.
That
like,
thing.
Or like people are like, oh, I can't listen to that song because it brings back horrible memories.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, well, that's a fucking blessing. Knock on all the woods.
oh yeah. Like there's nothing that I really watch that resonates in that way. Like,
yeah.
Which could be a bad thing sometimes, I think. Sometimes like people will be like, oh, this brings back, nothing brings back, like there's no music that I necessarily, I mean, there's things like, oh, this reminds me of
a time.
An era.
Yeah.
But a moment or something like that, like.
Well, you're young enough where you can make some new memories.
Yeah, my brain just doesn't hold on to certain things. Like I just feel like,
and sometimes that's probably for the best, for sure. It depends on your life. You know what I mean? Depends on your past. So it depends.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I need to explore that one.
Maybe. But, I will say that my family have always been, and me and Kira talked about this on one of the previous episodes, we've kind of always been exposed to like all sorts of movies and all sorts of like experiences through movies that growing up as a, and being an adult, I'm like, I'm just watching something. And I think too, especially now, we work in the industry, me, Kira, and my mom, where we're just like, okay, we're seeing how the sausage is made.
Yeah,
so
no, definitely,
it's just a totally different experience. And speaking of sausage, no.
Well, wait, actually, thinking of sausage, did you know that chitlins is the same thing that the sausage casing is? I just found that out on TikTok.
Oh wait, they use the intestines or the colon?
Yep, that's what sausage casing is. Because this lady was on like some TikTok talking about chitlins, and she was like, "And for all you people that sausage you eating is the same thing." And I was like,
"Except it don't got no boo boo in it.
It's already been cleaned.
Sans boo boo."
I was like, "Thank you for ruining that." I still don't want
you have not ruined it because I freaking love sausage.
Oh, I'm still eating. No, I'm talking about her. I was but I'm still gonna eat. But see, again.
Yeah. It's like, fuck you, lady.
Like,
yeah.
Whatever.
And low key, like me and my mom ordered Kenny's yesterday and we had hot links, and I'm sure that's probably the same casing. Yeah. Whatevs. Uh-oh, she's back. She was gone for 10 seconds. Okay, so season 2, episode 5. Ed Gein. Now, I read Deviant by Harold Schechter. Harold Schechter also wrote a book on H.H. Holmes. Oh. And I didn't read his book. It was called Depraved. And I didn't read his book because there was a H.H. Holmes historian that was local that wrote a book. So I read his book. Because I was like, not that he's smarter, but just that he's local. A Chicagoan. And then he also wrote the book on somebody else that I did, and I can't remember. It wasn't Carl Panzram, Albert Fish. That may have been called Depraved, whatever. But I've read a couple of his books so far.
I remember his name.
He's an actual he's like a serial killer expert. That's what he specializes in. What was interesting too, and what prompted me to do this episode was because I watched a documentary on the actual lost tapes of Ed Gein after he was arrested. Oh. And Harold Schechter was on the documentary. He had never heard his voice before. So they played it. And then like the podcasters from last podcast on the left were on there. It was a good documentary. I think it was like 4 episodes or something like that. It's called The Lost Tapes of Ed Gein, I think. Have to watch it. Yeah. But I'm going to link it. So okay. Why do I do effervescence on these things? So that's what I read. Now, again, we're drinking the Lemon-Lavender Gin Fizz, which is obviously a summer drink, but who cares? What the fuck are rules? Mind your business. That's all I got to say about that. They ain't got nothing to do with the price of tea. Nothing. All right. So this was interesting. As I was studying this, and, obviously in my head, I was reading, I was like, I want to watch Psycho so bad. But I know Psycho so well now. Yeah. And I've seen Psycho so many times that I didn't even need to watch it. I was like, oh, I see what I got that. Oh, I see what I got. Oh, I see what I got that.
Click, click, click.
Yeah. Because obviously Psycho was based on a book by Robert Bloch. And then Alfred Hitchcock adapted the book. He cast Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, Janet Leigh.
Didn't know that.
Yes, she's the one that.
Yeah.
And Martin Balsam, who plays the private investigator. Love him. If you've ever seen 12 Angry Men, if you've ever seen Murder on the Orient Express, he's one of those. He's just a phenomenal he's dead now, but back then he was a phenomenal actor. And of course, Anthony Perkins playing Norman Bates, which when you go back to see him and wait for the scene where he's walking up the stairs, you be like, yeah, he gay.
Oh, I can't wait.
Because he's switching
he just
prancing
up them stairs.
He used to, you know who he used to date? Rock Hudson. He used to date Rock Hudson, and his pretend girlfriend was Natalie Wood, who was the one who was killed on that boat with Christopher Walken. Oh. I was going to do an episode on her, actually, before I did Thelma Todd. I decided to do Thelma Todd instead.
Oh, well, maybe you have to revisit.
Mm-hmm. Christopher Walken was on the boat, and her boyfriend at the time, Robert Wagner, and, you know, they don't think Christopher Walker killed her, but she was on the boat, she was drunk, she can't swim, and there was an argument, and then she was like sleeping with multiple people. It was like, oh, and she the only one to die, huh? Okay, bet.
Oh, well, somebody killed her.
Someone. Okay, so let's talk about Ed Gein. Now, like I said, Ed Gein was the inspiration for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hitchcock Psycho, and he was Silence of the Lamb.
Love that movie.
Buffalo Bill. It rubs the lotion on its skin. Now, this episode is probably going to be similar to Carl Panzram and Albert Fish when it comes to gnarliness. Gein's life was an absolute mess, which is safe to say the start of a lot of these stories. I mean,
you can't have. Well, I won't say you can't have a pretty decent life and still turn into a serial killer. There are a few, but usually their lives kind of.
Now, it's interesting that you called him a serial killer too, because one of the things that was always asked was, well, Ed Gein only killed two people,
right, or something to that extent.
Yeah, and it was like, well, why is he a serial killer? And it was like, well, they found a lot of stuff in his house, and we'll get to that. So I'm not even gonna tease that. But there's this interesting little ditty. There once was a man named Ed who wouldn't take a woman to bed. When he wanted to diddle, he cut out the middle and hung the rest in the shed.
Oh.
Ed Gein was born on August 27th. Your face. Ed Gein was
the middle though.
Okay. Ed Gein was born on August 27, 1906, which makes him a Virgo.
Oh, well, you know they're emotional.
And he was born in La Crosse County, Wisconsin. Now, his parents were George and Augusta. George's family was from a small area called Coon Valley. Didn't look that up, felt racist.
I was like, Coon Valley?
I was like...
And they're in Wisconsin. Well,
could be raccoon, could be Negroes. Didn't want to think about it, so I just breezed right on past it. But when he was a child, his father, mother, and older sister left to run an errand when their wagon was caught in a flood. They all drowned. And George was orphaned. Mind you, George was a toddler. Is a toddler 3? Because he was 3.
Yeah, it's like a toddler, so right?
Yeah, I think. I don't know. I don't know baby stages. We already know. So he moved in with his grandparents. And he eventually would become like a blacksmith. But by his 20s, George was heading off back to La Crosse, where he bounced around from job to job. Now, this is because George was a bit of a lush. But who am I kidding? I'm a lush. George, he was just fucking drunk.
Okay.
Just like flat out. I mean, when you kind of think about it, he did lose his entire family when he was a toddler, which is, you know.
I mean, you were 3. Do you really remember?
I mean, I don't know. But I think you remember that you ain't got no parents and everybody else does.
You got grandparents.
True. That's true. What do you want, dog?
I don't know. I mean, it could be traumatic.
I think it's traumatic. So
yeah.
He was obviously depressed as he grew into his adult years. He was angry about his life and his circumstances. I mean, he felt like he would never amount to anything. And at the end of the day, he was absolutely worthless, which, as we know, is a clinical sign of depression. Yes. Like, that's a big part of depression. At 24, George meets Augusta. Now, Augusta was from a big family, big, industrious family. But she was a bit of a curmudgeon, and she was incredibly pious. She was a devout Lutheran, and brought up by an abusive father who beat her into a rigid code of conduct.
That sounds...
So she was serious about everything, which 24 is really young to be serious about everything. Exactly. And so they found everyone else. She found everyone else in the world absolutely disgusting.
As you probably would when you take everything so serious. Like, what other 24-year-old is like you?
Exactly. So they were like, she's like, oh my God, these people are weird. Everybody's weird. We're better than them because we're religious and they're going to go to hell.
Well, there's that.
So she thought she didn't like how anybody behaved. She didn't like how they spoke. The things that people were just doing reminded her of how sinful the world is. So she was stern and she was beyond self-righteous. I mean, the woman was like a statue. Like,
that's a horrible way to live. But I mean, I guess if your dad beat you into
submission. Now, who knows why they got married? I mean, it could be. She married him? Yeah, she did. I mean, it could be that George just needed a family and Augusta needed someone to control. I mean, she was good at controlling people. She was incredibly domineering, but she may have found an able-bodied husband that she could tolerate. She was like, look, he built, he gonna work, he gonna do what I say.
And maybe she felt bad for him.
Maybe she pitied him. She don't give me the pity type. She ain't giving me pity. So then they got married on December 4th, 1899. Now, George was worthless. He wasn't wrong. And everyone in town
knew it.
Everybody in town knew it too. I mean, they were like, this nigga George is like, why?
Well, he was a blacksmith, so I mean,
yeah, he had a skill. Now, Augusta called him names in public, but he was afraid of hard work, apparently. And this only made George even more weak and more reserved. They were like, this dude is just trash. Like,
well, and then you're letting your wife's running around in the 1900s, like in the beginning, end of the 1900s,
when men are doing everything.
And she treating you in public.
Exactly. So she called him names in public. George was even more weak and even more reserved because of that. Right. He would barely even speak. And now, every now and again, George would beat Augusta. So he would beat her just because he was drunk. He was just sick of her. He was angry.
Well, I mean, you keep calling me and berating me in public.
I was about to say, like, how do
beat you too?
How do you not expect somebody to pop you in your mouth eventually? Now, she would switch on to victim, though, of course, and then she would pray for his death, pretty consistently.
Okay.
Now, most couples would consummate the marriage by getting it on,
right?
But Augusta wasn't interested. She found sex to be an absolute abomination. She said, between husband and wife, carnal relations were a loathsome duty to be tolerated for the sake of procreation.
She never had good sex before.
In her life. So they did that, though. Well,
didn't care.
He was useless. So they did that. But George and Augusta had their first son after they did that. His name was Henry. January 17th, 1902, they have Henry. So George's useless ass, he keeps losing jobs. And Augusta thought it was high time for them to work for themselves. She was like, okay, if you're not going to get a job, then we need to at least have our own business or something that we can rely on.
She seems a little sensible.
She came from a big family that had stuff. Which is like, why would you marry a loser?
Like, why'd you marry below?
But I think it was because she wanted the control. So Augusta's brother were successful in their own right. They were in the market industry. They had like a bunch of markets and grocery stores.
Oh, cool.
And so Augusta and George opened a butcher and grocery store. Augusta was not the owner, but she handled all the affairs. And at first, George was listed as the owner. And then 2 years later, he was listed in the directories as the clerk.
Oh.
She was like, you don't do nothing.
I'm the owner.
So later they would have another child, and Augusta desperately wanted a girl. She didn't feel any attachment to her son, Henry. And on August 27, 1906, Augusta gave birth to Edward Theodore. Now, she was not happy that she had a boy. But she vowed that Edward wouldn't be like the rest of the boys. He was going to be different.
Was her first son not different?
No. Because I don't think she knew she wanted him to be different until she had the first son.
Since she had Edward, she's like, okay, wait.
Yeah. She didn't want him to be a gross and like sex-hungry man. She was like, I don't want that for Ed. Now, Edward was the absolute epitome of a mama's boy. He would literally cry when he disappointed her. He thought she was perfect. She had ultimately trained him to think that, though. I mean,
yeah.
She was just really demeaning, and she was an expert at beating him into submission, which is what she learned from her own father. Now, she almost feels like she has Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which is basically when someone falsely claims that another person has a physical illness in order for them to get the attention. And I actually did a show called The Act back in Savannah that was about Gypsy Rose. Gypsy Rose just got out of jail last week too. So anyway, go see The Act. It's on Hulu. But Gypsy's mom had Munchausen syndrome by proxy. But the obvious difference between, Ed's mom and a normal person with Munchausen syndrome by proxy is that she believed everything that she was telling Eddie. Like, it wasn't just the attention thing. Like, she wasn't just finessing. It was like, she thought the world was absolutely maddening.
Because she was nuts.
Yeah, she was crazy. Now, she wasn't just making him this way because she wanted the attention. She did it because she believed that she was the only one that could save him from this cruel world. That was it. Now, once he was... I know. Once when he was a child, he was told that he was not allowed to enter the shed in the back of the grocery store. And Ed noticed that animals went in and they never came out. So one time he snuck into the shed. Quote, there hanging upside down from a chain in the ceiling was a slaughtered hog. His father stood to one side of the animal holding it steady while his mother slipped a long bladed knife down the length of its belly, pulled open the flaps, reached inside, and began to work at the glistening ropes of its bowels, which slid out of the carcass and into a large metal tub at her feet. Both his parents had on long leather aprons splattered with blood. So you just caught your parents butchering.
Well, I'd be a vegetarian after that.
Yeah, no. This may have been that moment. This may have been the moment that made it impact.
How old was he then at that point?
He was like in his like 9, 10-ish. Now,
very fundamental years.
Yeah. And eventually Ed's family was shifted from business into farming. This was a decision of Augusta's because she was getting to a point where she was like, I'm sick of working this farm. I'm sick of working this store. I got 2 able-bodied sons. I got a useless husband. Like, we need to make some real money. So they farmed off and made money off their dairy cows. And rye. So this is when Ed was 7 at this point. And so he was even younger when the butchering happened. Now, Augusta wanted to get away from La Crosse. She thought it was a filthy, disgusting place. Like in 1914, they moved to Plainfield. Now, this property wasn't in George's name. It was in Augustus.
Oh.
Yeah.
Could they? I didn't know that even could happen back then.
George was a loser. And everybody in town knew he was a loser. So wasn't nobody really making a big deal out of it. They're like, I mean, husband's a loser and he's drunk. What do you want? Now, this was Augusta's place. She kept it absolutely immaculate. It was a, quote, trim 2-story affair, an L-shaped white frame building with a parlor, a kitchen, a pair of bedrooms on the first floor, and 5 more rooms upstairs. The outbuildings, including a fair-sized barn, a chicken coop, and an equipment shack. There was also a shed-like summer kitchen that had been built onto one end of the house with a connecting door opening into the regular kitchen.
Dope.
She decked this place out with new furniture, but what she really loved about the home was isolation. She didn't rock with the fact that Plainfield was Catholic, Baptist, and Methodist because she was Lutheran. She had no church home. So living this far from civilization made it apparent that she would be the one to teach her kids religious and moral beliefs.
So I guess that's my religious ignorance. Because like, what's the difference between
we ain't even gonna do that. Me and Kira had the same conversation. I was like, dude, I ain't even gonna hold you.
I was like,
same shit, different asshole.
I was like, I'm confused because they all believe in
same shit, different.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Same shit, different. Stop it. She is biting this ottoman. Stop it. Go do something else. So she was just one of those people. She was just like, I don't want to be all around these people. She was like, and plus the townsfolk didn't like her at all. They thought she was an uppity bitch.
What? Because she thought everybody else was, yeah.
But it was hard to tell, like, if they were hating because she was doing so well, or if it was an issue with the fact that she looked down on all of them because she was like, these people are trash, which was probably
so probably a mixture.
Yeah.
She looked down on them, and she was doing better than them.
She was. I mean, and she literally didn't care. What she knew she had to do.
What was her sign?
Exactly. Wait, what was her sign? I don't think I have her birthday. But what she knew that she had to do was keep her sons from them. They can't be around none of these people. She was going to be all that they would ever need.
Oh, that's a way to create a psycho.
Thank you. That was punny. Now, when Ed got to school, he was okay. He passed. He was just not having a good time. He was made fun of often. Duh. He spent a lot of time alone. He could never really fit in. And anytime Ed would try to make friends, his mother would disagree.
That makes sense.
She wouldn't say things. She would say things like, there are dark rumors about them, or that family has a bad reputation.
How would she know since she didn't talk to anybody?
Yeah, because she's evil. And so she was confused because she was thinking this whole time that she was actually teaching him something. She's like, why would he think he can fuck with any of these people? Like, does he not know who I am? And he will return to school and then just act like he didn't know the kid. Oh. Which is...
That's like ghosting without ghosting.
Literally. And
like, I'm going to ghost you in your face.
I'm actually a ghost you can see.
Casper, hello. So friendly ghost.
It's terrible. So now Ed was already really different. But no one thought he was dangerous. I mean, he was incompetent. And he was also isolated. But that was pretty much it. You know, like they were like, I mean, he's just a strange kid.
Daddy dumb, his mama crazy.
What else?
What would he be?
This is a recipe for disaster. Now, what his peers did notice was that, quote, the way his eyes kept shifting around whenever he tried to talk to you, the odd lopsided grin he always wore, even when the conversation had to do with deer hunting accident that this guy named Eugene Johnson or old man Beckley's heart attack, his habit of laughing at weirdly inappropriate times as though he was listening to some strange private joke that no one else could hear.
I mean, was it that awkward laugh? You know, people like...
Uncomfortable?
Yeah, you just kind of smile because you're like, I don't know what to do. Not smile.
Again, psychopathic. Now, he would sometimes get caught just staring at the girls in class. Conversations about sex made him blush. He was meek. He was soft. The classmates noticed that he came off a little girlish. He was hella sensitive, and he could never take a joke. Like, not like everything made him
sound
cry.
Like there's that many jokes happening in his house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Didn't know what a joke was.
He was like, I don't know what a joke is. He would just get teased for this eye. He had this like fleshy growth like over his left eyelid that kind of just made it look like his eye was swollen, like he had a sty.
Yeah, like a permanent sty.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, and it kind of made his eye droop. And one boy used to call him Eddie's saggy, baggy eye.
Kids are so cruel.
That's why y'all need to stop having them. They need to start. We need to figure out a way to birth adults.
That would make life easy. Well, no.
It wouldn't because adults suck too.
Yeah, I'm going to say, well, you know.
No. Now, he would sometimes get caught just staring. Oh, I already said that part. Now, this only confirmed what his mother had been telling him.
That people are trash?
The world fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And so do all the people that live in it. Meanwhile, back at the farm, George is being an abusive, useless asshole. I mean, he would go on alcoholic rampages and even accused Augusta of adultery, which Be fucking for real.
Let's be for real. She don't even want to have sex with you.
No, she doesn't
like anybody.
She was the mother of all prudes. There was no way
I almost want to think she's a lesbian.
That she probably was. That this woman would sleep with anyone, period, let alone someone other than her husband.
Yeah.
Not to mention, she was booked and busy. She had more than enough to do. She had no time to be distracted by anyone because she was distracted.
We know
by
that
the
doesn't really take time to.
Oh, that's facts. Yeah, but she was booked and busy. She had stuff to do. She had a business. She had a farm.
Yeah.
She had things to do.
She had 2 kids.
She had 2 kids. Her husband was useless. She was doing everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, taking care of a farm is not easy. She's also butchering her own animals,
and keeping the house pristine.
Exactly. Now Ed was doomed.
Yeah, no, he was.
His father was a coward. His mother was a nut. His relationship with his mother was strange, but the entire situation was strange. She would talk about the floods and how eventually they'd wash away the sins of women. That's girl
not what the Bible says.
Very gay. The lips of strange woman drop honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her latter end is bitter as wormwood, which I like wormwood. It's an absinthe. Sharp as a 2-edged sword. Now, therefore, my son, hearken unto me, and depart not the words of my mouth. Remove thy way from her, and come not nigh the door of her house. For why shouldest thou, my son, be ravished with a strange woman, and embrace the bosom of a stranger? Why, my son? And what, O son of my womb? And what, O son of my vows? Give not thy strength unto women, nor thy ways to that which destroyeth kings. Proverbs. Henry was against Augusta. He was nothing like Ed. He was not falling for the okie doke at all. He would even try to date girls, but as Henry got older, he just stayed away from women altogether, which was apparently the case of Augusta's brothers as well, because none of them married.
Oh, okay.
And then at 66, George Gein dies. His funeral was April 4th, 1940. Now, he was a sickly man. And they were, he was drunk. They were sick of taking care of him. They were sick of taking care of him. And no one was that upset that he died.
Did anybody care?
I mean, he was a mean drunk. Yeah. End of story. Now, the house was not being taken care of. It was becoming harder and harder to scrape money together to afford the improvements. The house didn't have electricity or plumbing. Oh. The house had looked exactly the way it did in 1914 when it was purchased. And Ed would try to go to the army, but he was rejected because he didn't want to do none of this. He was like, let's get out. Henry was too old.
Got it.
He was like, I can't go. Ed tried to go, but then he was rejected when he took his health exam because of the fleshy growth over his eye. Impaired his vision, so he couldn't even go. So he couldn't even go to the army.
Oh, so you're like your dad, kind of worthless.
Yeah, but he was 36 at this point.
Oh.
Now he found some work as a handyman. He was helping with repairs. He was doing roofing, but he also did some babysitting. Kids liked Ed. I mean, he would tell them scary stories. He would play games with them. I mean, he was practically a child himself. So I suppose this makes sense because it's like, you're kind of a boy in your own house, even though you're like 40. That's like if, at our age.
I know. I don't know if I would want a developmentally sounding challenged person watching my kids.
Mm-mm. But, this is also that time period when people were like, kids, what are they? Work mules.
That is true, too.
They're just things to do stuff. Now, he was insecure. He was really insecure around adults, even though a lot of people would say that he was a great neighbor. He was nothing like his stuck-up mother. They couldn't stand Augusta. He and his brother also had a great relationship. Henry was kind of normal. So they do like sibling activities. They go fishing, they go hunting. Every now and again they bump heads, but that was only because of Ed's. Yeah, but also because of Ed's relationship with Augusta. Henry thought that it was just really freaking strange. He was like, what is wrong with you and her?
That makes sense.
So Ed was confused by this because He thought that Henry shared the same feelings about her that he had. Then on May 16, 1944, Henry died at 43.
Oh.
He was with Ed, helping him put out a marsh fire that was mysteriously caused, which was rumored to be caused from burning leaves. Well, while they were putting out the blaze, Ed claimed he lost Henry because it got dark. But when he went to go get the sheriff's department to perform the search, Ed led them to exactly where Henry was.
Oh, did we kill him?
Quote,
victim number 1.
When they mentioned that to Eddie, he only shrugged and agreed with them. And he said, funny how that works. The medical examiner, though, declared the cause of death as asphyxiation and, quote, as foul play did not enter into the death of Mr. Gein, and no one suspected Ed in Henry's death.
Okay. I mean,
it is what it is, right? Now, to Ed, his mother was the business, okay? She was a miracle. She was something to be awed, literally. Eventually, Augusta would have her own health issues, though. She claimed to be faint all the time. She needed a doctor. He would find out that his mother actually had a stroke. Now, he would nurse her back to her feet because there was a period she couldn't walk, and she lost like facial mobility.
Oh, from the stroke.
Mm-hmm. But she was still pretty mean to him. When he would try to help her, she'd say, "Move, boy, I can manage myself." And then in 1945, Ed and his mother were at a neighbor's house to buy hay fodder when they witnessed the neighbor beating a puppy with a stick. His mother was so upset, but not because of the puppy. She was upset because the neighbor was living with some woman, and the woman wasn't his wife.
Business.
Mind you, he beat this puppy and killed it. But she's mad at the fact that this grown-ass man got some rent because the woman was screaming at him to stop beating the puppy. She wasn't mad at that. She was mad because she was like, why he got this harlot?
Why he got this woman here?
Why is she here?
And why is she saying something about this puppy getting beat?
Exactly. Now, it was stupid. Now, 1 week later, on December 29th, 1945, this old bitch dies.
Oh, okay.
Now, good riddance. She was only 67. She died of a cerebral hemorrhage. She had basically had another stroke. Ed wept like a baby. Couldn't stop crying. He was all on his own now. His father was dead. His brother was dead. His mother was dead. Now, his brother's dead because he probably killed him. So,
that's what happens when you're old.
Yeah. Now, it's true. Then. It's true. Now, even with Augusta being dead, the townsfolk didn't really notice how much Ed was changing. He was already so strange. He was always disheveled. He had poor hygiene. He was kind of weird. He was awkward socially. He never really shaved. But the farm was already on the decline. They just didn't know how much of decline
it really was going down.
Yeah.
And if you're already weird, nobody's paying attention.
Nobody's paying attention. They're like, whatever, he's weird. And then after George's death, it was like after Augusta's death, it's even more so because she was actually keeping some things clean.
Yeah.
He really stopped doing anything to the place. Quote, his room is, if possible, even more squalid than the kitchen, a chaos of discarded food tins, empty cartons, crumbled newspapers, corroded hand tools, old musical instruments, including a broken accordion and a violin without strings, and 3-foot stack of tattered coveralls. A clothesline hung with soiled handkerchiefs is strung above Eddie's iron bedstead.
Sounds like a hoarder.
Yeah. Amid the insane clutter and filth, the only objects that seem to have ever been treated with care are Eddie's firearms. 2 .22 caliber rifles, a .22 caliber pistol, a 7.65 millimeter Mauser, and a 12 gauge shotgun.
Okay.
Now, to support himself, he would rent a few acres of the land, and then he would work it as a handyman, which is like, that's pretty confusing because you're a handyman for a living, but your house is in shambles. That's weird. But he was strong. Everyone knew that he could be relied on for work. Okay. So he was kind of just like the guy.
Better than his dad.
Way better in that capacity, yeah. Now, he was quiet. He was well-mannered, so most people didn't question the condition of his home. I mean, because he was alone all the time. Some of the other farmers' wives would like cook for him, make sure he had something to eat because they knew that he was by himself. But the problem is that he would always look at the wives and the daughters
a little weird.
A little too weird. He like, why does he be staring at these women?
Because he think they're full of sin.
Well, and they knew though that he didn't mean any harm. But when he got caught staring, he would just like bolt, like get rigid and like bolt out of his chair. And they were like, awkward. Yo, like what is that? Now the farmers didn't care about him, the men. They thought that he he just doesn't even have enough sense to really pay attention to. And he's strong enough to take care of himself. So we don't even understand why you're doing all of this for him. But the women felt bad for him. And even as an adult, he was still bullied. They still made jokes about him. Generally, after a day's harvesting was done, the crew would unwind with a tub of ice beer. And on a few occasions, one of the fellows would hand Eddie a bottle that had been half filled with brandy.
Oh, that's
Eddie would
petty.
guzzle it down, not noticing the difference. And before you knew it, his droopy eyelid would begin to sag even more.
Oh, humans really are trash.
They are trash. Like, why y'all do this to this man? Now, they even planted a smoke bomb under the hood of his car once, and they got a real nice laugh when Ed jumped out of the truck thinking that it was about to explode.
Men really are stupid. I mean, because in real that no matter how old you are, I feel like when you put a bunch of men together in that kind of environment,
yeah,
there's always like somebody they're picking on.
Yeah, for sure.
Bunch
of brutes.
Yeah.
A lot of the men thought that he was weak acting, and he would even claim to have an issue with blood once, which is kind of hard to believe considering they butchered animals all the time on the farm.
Yeah.
But then they found out that Ed really loved true crime magazines.
Oh, cool. They had those back then?
Yeah, but he would tell them about the stories he'd read about, and, he would tell anybody who would listen. He was just absolutely fascinated with murder. Murder was one of his favorite topics.
Well, no judgment there.
Now, he also liked to study Nazis, though. Specifically,
a little judgment there.
A little bit. Specifically, female Nazis like Irma Grace, which I was thinking about doing her before I did Todd as well. Irma Grace, who was a 19-year-old SS guard, she hand-selected women and children to be executed. And then there is the bitch of Buchenwald, who her name is Ilse Koch. She collected human remains and used their skin as like lampshades and like book bindings.
I know her story.
Yeah,
somehow,
because she always comes up randomly, like on Instagram, on Facebook,
I feel like
shit
I know,
like that.
I feel like.
He also liked cannibal and headhunter stories. One story in particular was about a man who was shipwrecked on a Polynesian island and got tortured and flayed by natives. He also loved stories about exhumations, which is, the body snatchers who stole corpses and sold them to anatomy schools. H.H. Holmes, go back to episode 1, season 1. There's 3 parts of that. I keep saying I'm going to go back to that episode, but I'm afraid. Now, at this point, Ed is 41, right?
Actually, you should.
I should. That'd be interesting. Now, at this point, Ed is 41. He was a complete recluse. But one place he would regularly go was Mary Hogan's Tavern. Now, he wasn't a drinker, by the way. He was just there to stare at Mary Hogan. Mary Hogan was a 200-pound middle-aged German woman, but she looked a lot like Augusta. Rumor has it she was divorced twice, connected to the mob in Chicago, and possibly a madam. So
cool. I like her.
She had a nice little vibe. Now, she was nothing like Augusta.
Not at all.
She was more like Augusta's evil twin.
Yeah, I was like, she sounds like the exact opposite, actually.
Now, one thing that also is important to mention is Christine Jorgensen, who was an ex-GI from New York City that changed her sex in Denmark. She was the first person to become widely known for having a sex change. And this was in the early 1950s.
Wait. So she went from female to male?
Mm-hmm. No, male to female.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. This was in the early 1950s, and Gein was obsessed with Christine Jorgensen. He had always dreamed of being a girl and having girl parts. Now, Gein desperately missed his mother, and sometimes he could still hear her.
The whole family was crazy.
He could hear her voice. He was obviously depressed and lonely and possibly schizo. He thought about selling the farm, but couldn't really muster up the energy to do it. He became paranoid, thinking that someone was watching him. And one time he claimed to have seen a pile of faces laughing at him in a pile of leaves.
Where's psychotherapy happening right now? Like, I mean,
in the middle of Wisconsin, probably nowhere.
Makes sense.
Now, around Plainfield, there was a lot of mysterious disappearances, at least 5 actually, and they were pretty spread out, but they were all abductions. But then there was the disappearance of Mary Hogan. And on December 8th, 1954, Seymour Lester walked into Mary Hogan's tavern and it was empty. He noticed blood on the floor. He ran down to the nearest farmhouse to call the town chairman, and then he called the sheriff's department. And when the police arrived, they found a .32 caliber cartridge lying on the floor and a patch of dried blood. The blood was streaking as if the blood was dragged. Talks around the town about Hogan started. Quote, "Eddie," said Elmo Ueck, "if you had spent more time courting Mary, she'd be cooking for you instead of being missing." Ueck would never forget Eddie's response. As he recalled years later, Eddie rolled his eyes, wiggled his nose like a dog sniffing a skunk. Then he smiled. "She's not missing. She's down at the house now."
Oh.
He's an eyeball. He must be joking, right?
Right. That maybe
he
not.
He would crack this joke often. She's at the farm right now. He would say this like grinning. And then he would say stuff like,
check the farm.
I went and got her in my pickup truck and took her home. He kept talking about taking this woman home. I mean, there were already rumors of shrunken heads being at Gein's house. One teenager, because he always had kids at his house.
Right. Because he liked kids. Because he related to them better.
Oh, my God. But if the parents saw the condition of this man's house, one teenager claimed to have seen him. He was like, he had been hunting with Ed. When he went into the house, he was one of the few people that did. Ed would show off the head collection and say that they were genuine South Seas shrunken heads sent by his cousin from the Philippines, which, as we know, is probably what he got from the comic or from the true crime magazines. There were many kids playing around his dirty ass house. And they were playing with items that they would just find on the floor. And one of these,
reason I don't like kids, like,
why?
Come touch me.
Why does it, like you in a clean house yourself? Why would you ever think this is a place you should play? It just don't make no sense.
Come home and touch me.
Exactly.
I'll pass.
Quote, "One of these times when we were over there, I ran out of paper and I asked Eddie where I could get more. He told me to go into his bedroom. When I went around the corner, there were 3 heads hanging on that door. Just the heads. The faces were dried and they had hair on them." Remember those African movies with the shrunken heads?
Yeah.
That's what they were kind of like. Not really shrunken, though. I'd have to say they were actual size. I asked my brother what the heads could be. He told me they were probably Halloween get-ups, and I was young enough that I believed it. I never asked Eddie about it, but from that particular time or shortly thereafter, Eddie no longer let my brother or me into the house. The heads became a joke around Plainfield. Ed would joke about the heads himself. Quote, "Is that where you keep your shrunken heads?" He gave me a funny look. My husband looked at me too, and I wished I hadn't said it. But then Ed gave me that little grin and pointed to another room. "No, they're in the other room over there."
So nobody thinks this is...
Guess not. So Gein kind of turned into the boogeyman, which, as we know, over time, certain like urban legends and different stories and things change, and it gets through the grapevine, and people start just talking about that weird man that lives in that farm that does all this foul shit, but
with shrunken heads.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like,
or not
probably
so
true. Now it's 1957. Ed stopped at Warden's Hardware and Implement Store. Bernice Warden, a widow, owned the establishment after the passing of her husband, Leon. She was 58. She was solid. A grandmother, too. She was a businesswoman, though. Bernice was busy. Her son, Frank, would help her at the store as well. But he was not only like helping her with the store, he was also village constable, fire marshal, and a sheriff's deputy.
Okay.
He was basically Kira.
I was like...
Now, Ed had started to hang around the store. Just that evening, when he entered her store, he was asking for antifreeze. He came back, and Warden was alone. So they had a little moment prior when Ed asked her if she wanted to, quote, try out the floor at the skating rink. She didn't take him seriously at all, and she thought he was just a weirdo. But she wasn't at all surprised when he came back to the store because his family had been customers for years.
Right. Okay.
So
because this is Lloyd B. Town.
Yeah, exactly. So he came back acting like he wanted to trade in his Marlin 22 rifle for another rifle because she also sold guns.
Okay.
And when she handed Ed the rifle, she turned to look out the window, and he reached into his pocket. He grabbed a 22 caliber shell and he put it in that gun and he shot her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. A gas station attendant across the street noticed Warden's car leave and was sure there was a male driver, which didn't strike him as odd because she always had delivery men at her establishment.
Because she was a store.
She was a store. So what he did notice was that the following day, her shop was closed, but her lights were still burning.
Oh.
Yeah.
Burning?
No electricity.
Okay. I was like, do we still not have electricity in the 60s?
Look, but why? When her son returned from hunting, he was confused. He knew his mother had planned on keeping the store open all day. So when he got inside, he realized that the cash register was missing and there was blood on the floor that led all the way to the back door. Oh. So Frank, her son, called the sheriff. His name was Art Schley. And when the sheriffs arrived, Frank told them he's done something to her. Sheriff's Deputy Fritz was like, who? He was like, Eddie Gein.
Finally, somebody's pointing the finger.
When asked why he suspected him, quote, he's been hanging around here a lot lately, bothering my mother to go to roller skating and dancing and to movie shows. So he kept shooting his shot. She kept shooting him down. Just the day before Warden went on, Gein had come by the store around closing time to check the price of antifreeze. And while there, he had inquired very casually if Frank intended to go hunting on Saturday. Frank, not attaching any particular significance to the question, had confirmed that he meant to be out in the woods first thing in the morning. Frank then showed Schley and Fritz something he had discovered while awaiting for the sheriff's arrival. It was a slip of paper with his mother's handwriting on it, and she had made it out that morning. As far as Frank was concerned, it was a piece of evidence that pointed directly to Gein. It was a sales receipt for antifreeze. So he came in to inquire about the price, came back and bought it.
And then killed her.
So
they got antifreeze, but not electricity?
Now, you know what? It could be she has electricity, but the person who quoted that used the term burning because it used to burn.
No, it used to burn. I'm just like, we got antifreeze.
She may have had electricity.
I need to Google when electricity became common in houses.
Well, and that's the thing. We know Ed Gein don't got no electricity, but that's because his house hadn't been up. Yeah, his house hadn't been updated. Yeah. Now, immediately they knew they needed to find Ed. Now, everybody and their mother was in Plainfield. All the cops, all the deputy, all the people, everybody was looking for Ed. And when they found him, he was chilling at the home of Irene Hill playing with her kids. Her son-in-law, Jim, came running in and was like, oh my God, did you hear about Warden's disappearance? And Ed was like, must have been somebody cold-blooded. Okay. Irene then thought, Ed had also been with Mary Hogan. So she asked, quote, how come every time somebody gets banged on the head and hauled away, you're always around? He gives his little shit-eating grin and he shrugs.
Makes sense to me.
Now, of course, her son Bob wanted to go down to the commotion downtown because everybody was looking for Bernice Warden. So he wanted to go downtown. So he asked Ed, he said, hey, would you take me downtown? Ed was like, duh, yeah, I'll take you downtown. And when the police came by Ed's farm, they noticed that no one was home. So they go across to where Irene lives. They ask her, where's Ed? And she's like, oh, he's sitting in his car right in the driveway. Unless he's taking off. He's driving my son downtown to see what's going on. The police walked over and there was Ed sitting in the car with Bob. Oh. They told Ed, hey, we need to talk to you. They, of course, asked Ed, where was he? What did he do on the day of Warden's disappearance? Eddie blinked once, then said, somebody framed me.
Oh, okay.
Framed you for what? Well, Mrs. Warden. What about Miss Warden? Well, she's dead, ain't she? Dead? How do you know she's dead? And then Eddie's lopsided grin seemed frozen in place. Well, I heard it. Where'd you hear it? I heard them talking about it. Trying to sound all nonchalant. But then, whatever doubts the officer had been entertaining about Gein's involvement had completely evaporated. And he knew he had his man. So, what's next? Well, they head over to Gein's house to search the place for evidence. Okay? When they walk in, the two officers, one of them, Officer Schley, was there. He opens the door. He steps back, and he could feel something brush up against his back. Oh. Quote, there, in the beam of his flashlight, dangled a large, dead, white carcass. Okay. It was hanging upside down by its feet.
Ooh, just like a pig.
Its front had been split completely open so that its trunk was little more than a dark gaping hole. The carcass had been decapitated as though someone had sliced the head off for a trophy. The body had been butchered like a heifer or a dressed out deer. Only it wasn't an animal. It was the body of a human being, an adult woman, Bernice Warden's body. Oh. They trained their flashlights on the gutted, headless woman suspended by her heels from the ceiling. A crude wooden crossbar, 3 feet long, bark covered, and sharpened to a point at both ends, had been shoved through the tendons of one ankle. The other foot had been slit above the heel and secured to the rod with a stout cord. Her arms were held taut at her sides by hemp ropes that ran from her wrist to the crossbar. The bar itself had been hooked to the block and tackle, and hauled up toward the roof beams, and there, left to keep, in the coldness of the shed like a side of beef in a butcher's meat locker, the mutilated remains of the 58-year-old grandmother hung.
Well, he clearly did not have an issue with blood.
At all. Now, leaving the summer kitchen, they head over to the main part of the house. There was garbage everywhere. He had so much garbage in his house that they looked at it and they thought that he had been bringing garbage in from the dump. Because it was just like random. He had a coffee can filled with chewing gum, a display shelf of just yellow dentures.
Okay.
They found a soup bowl made out of a human skull. He had skull caps, which is the part of the skull that they saw off. He had that all over the place, as well as complete skulls. And he was also using skulls to decorate his bedposts. Okay. I ain't done. Eddie made a kitchen chair seat out of human skin. When they flipped it over, the other side still had fat on it. They found 4 of those. He had also made lampshades, a wastebasket, bracelets, a tom-tom, which is drums, and a knife sheath. They were all made out of skin. They found a belt made out of female nipples.
I don't know. Okay, so homeboy is talented though.
As fuck.
Like
crafty.
I mean, crafty as hell. Like maybe if we gave him some like fabric, he could have been a clothing designer.
He could have did something else.
Like the fuck.
A shade pool made out of women's lips. Because he didn't have electricity, they brought in a generator to light the house, and they found more stuff.
I don't know if I would want to light that house up.
A shoebox filled with female genitalia. 9 vulvas to be exact. They had started to dry and shrivel, and one was covered in silver paint and trimmed with red ribbon. There was even a fresh one. It had a piece of mons veneris, which is that fatty part of the vagina where the hair usually grows, the pubic, that covers the pubic bones. It's usually covered in pubic hair, but this, if you need a visual, there was also still anus attached.
Y'all can't see my face, but my jaw is like dropped and I'm like really disturbed at the moment.
Oh, it has salt sprinkled on it. They found a box of 4 human noses, a Quaker Oats container filled with head skin, which is called integument.
Okay, where were all these missing people at?
I'm going to tell you. There were several pairs of leggings made out of human legs and a torso of a middle-aged woman. He had skinned the top part as well as the breasts and attached cord so he can wear it as a vest.
When did he even have time to do all of this?
He clearly had nothing but time. Then he had a huge mask collection. He had peeled the faces off 9 female skulls, no eyes, hair still attached. Some had been treated with oil to preserve the skin. I was like, you moisturized?
Oh, God. When you're saying this, I'm just like envisioning like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, 100%. Like a crude face mask. Some of them had lipstick on them. 4 of them had been stuffed with paper and hung in Ed's bedroom. These were the shrunken heads, quote unquote, even though they weren't shrunken. Then one of the officers found a paper bag, and in it was more faces, but they had been dried out. When he had picked them up, he picked up one, and one of the deputies was like, "Oh my God, it's Mary Hogan."
Well, there goes one of the dead bodies.
Mary Hogan had been missing for 3 years at this point. They found so many body parts that they didn't know how many people could have supplied them. All of this was mostly in the bedroom and in the kitchen. They hadn't even made it to the rest of the house.
What does this house smell like?
Dog dookie. Like death.
I'm confused
blood,
on how they're even in there.
Literally. But it's probably because it's so freaking cold. This is in winter in Wisconsin.
Oh, good point.
So
like they're preserved.
Refrigerated. And he don't have electricity.
Or gas.
Exactly. So there was a part of the house that was completely boarded up and shut off. And this was the bedroom and the parlor of Augusta Gein. In pristine, even though dusty as hell, condition. He left it exactly the same. Now, they found Warden's heart in a plastic bag. A pile of entrails, still warm, wrapped in newspaper inside of folded men's clothes. In the summer kitchen where they found the body, they found 2 stained mattresses sandwiched together, and in between them, they found a burlap sack with steam rising off of it. What was in the sack? Her head.
Was he trying to shrink it?
I don't know. I don't know why he put it in between 2 mattresses. I guess to hide it. I don't know, but it was fresh.
I mean, did he really care about hiding anything?
Quote, what Eddie had done was taken 2 10-penny nails, bend them into hooks, connect them with 2-foot length of twine, and stick 1 nail in each of Bernice Warden's ears. In this way, the head could be hung in Eddie's bedroom as a trophy or a wall ornament.
I hope nobody was eating during this episode.
No, I'm sorry. I was actually like maxing on ribs, which I was like, wow, Brittany. Now, it was November 7th, Sunday, and she technically went missing Friday. Saturday is when Frank finds out that Saturday is when her store wasn't open. And Frank was like, no, her store was supposed to be open all day Saturday. So this is Sunday.
So she's only been gone for 2 days.
12 hours. No.
Not even.
12 hours since Frank realized. But she's been gone since Friday. So needless to say, they locked Gein up. But Gein had admitted to nothing, nor was he read his Miranda rights to an attorney. Now, this case would change the reputation of Plainfield, Wisconsin forever. Like it would forever be associated with Ed Gein. When they examined Warden's body, this body, I'm not even going to
Does this place even exist, Plainfield, anymore?
Yeah, it still does.
Change the name if I were them.
the body and the head, I mean, they found so many indications that he just treated it like it was just a piece of meat. There were parts of the body that had been cleaned. He was literally just treating it like it was a pig or a cow or just something he was butchering. Now, the postmortem reports also state how Gein removed Worden's heart. He removed it in a deer hunter's pattern, and that the medical examiner wonders if the murder stemmed from Gein's reading of crime comics and movies. So this was suspected because they found a ton of pseudo-pornographic crime magazines at his house. Now, do I even need to say it? The media had a field day with this.
Oh, God, I can only imagine.
Oh, my God. They called his house the murder factory. You know, they love putting names on shit. And when they learned about how Gein strung up Worden's body, it was even more sensationalized. The body parts, there was the body parts, the furniture made out of the human remains, the body snatching, which we ain't even got to that yet, the plastic bag with Hogan's face in it. And then there was the rumors of jars of human blood in the basement. And then there was the fact that he was possibly a cannibal.
Oh, wait, hold on. It made like 5 horror movies.
Yeah, like literally.
Literally, though.
Now, Monday, they discovered 6 more heads. They were wrapped in plastic bags and tossed under furniture. Now, who else did Gein kill? They were like, there has been various missing person cases in the county over the past 10 years. Could it have been him? Gein stayed quiet for a day and a half, and finally he admitted to killing Worden, but couldn't remember the details because he was in a, quote, daze.
Okay.
Scene. Gein gets interviewed by the prosecutor. His name was Colleen. Now, this is Colleen. Now, you start from the time you went into Worden's implement store. Tell us exactly what happened the best you can recall. Gein. When I went into Mrs. Worden's store, I took a glass jug for permanent antifreeze. When I entered the hardware store, she came toward me and said, "Do you want a gallon of antifreeze?" And I said, "No, a half gallon." She got out the antifreeze, she pumped it out, and I held the jug for her to pour it in, and then she pumped out another quart, and I was still holding the jar while she pumped that. Then I paid her with a $1 bill. She gave me back 1 cent because it was 99 cents. And this is what I can't remember from now because I don't know just what happened from now on, you see. She glanced out the window towards the filling station across the street, and she said, "They are checking deer there." And then she looks towards the west, out of the west and north windows, and said, "There are more people uptown than I thought there would be." She might have said something about the opening of the season. She might have said that. Colleen said, "Do you remember striking her or shooting her?" Gein. "No, this is what got me, whether I took my antifreeze out. That is what I can't remember. It is hard for me to say from now on. My memory is a little vague, but I do remember dragging her across the floor. I remember loading her body in the truck. Then I drove the truck out on the East Road at the intersection where 51 and 73 separate East Plainfield. I drove the truck up in the pine trees. Then I walked to the town and got in my car and drove it out there and loaded her body in the back of the car and also the cash register."
Sounds like his memory's pretty good to me.
Thank you. I loaded the cash register in the truck, and when I put her body in there, then I drove out to my farm and I took the body out of the car and hung it up by the heels in my woodshed. Colleen, tell how you took the blood out and buried it. You used the knife you made from the file to cut her up? That is as close as I can remember. I was in a regular daze, like I can't swear to it. Colleen, then you said that you took the blood from the body and you put that out, buried it out by the toilet house where you pointed it out, east of the toilet. Do you, because you know they had outhouses.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you had the blood in? Was it a pail, a bucket, a jar? It must have been a pail. What kind of pail? Probably galvanized, probably a 10-quart pail. He's very specific. Then you proceeded to dress out the body. You told me that you thought you were dressing out a deer. That is the only explanation I can think was in my mind.
Okay.
Now, when they asked Gein about the cannibalism, he said he couldn't remember. When they asked him if he killed anyone else, he said, not to my knowledge.
He's like, I ain't gonna miss to it.
When asked about whether or not he had sex with the bodies, he said, they smell too bad.
That's a good answer.
When they asked him about the scraps of humans all over the house, he said he did not kill all of those people. He killed Mrs. Warden, but that was an accident because he was in a daze. All the body parts had come from the graveyards.
Have they, though? Because they seem a little fresh to be.
Well, that one was fresh because that one had steam on it.
Okay.
Now, over 5 years, this man made several visits to the cemetery to steal body parts. He would read the obituaries in the paper, find newly dead middle-aged women. Some of these women he knew, and then he would dig them up, and he claimed he left the graves in apple pie order. I have no fucking idea what that means. Now, Gein claimed to want to show them something back at the house. He loved this attention. He didn't shy away from the journalists at all. He basically gave them a tour. He showed them where he drained Warden with the pail at the outhouse. I mean, just...
The things that you could do in the 60s. Or the late 50s.
Yeah, like they also found Warden's cash register, which only had $41 in it. Gein was going to be charged with first-degree murder and larceny, but Gein went ahead and hired a lawyer. Now, he was accused of other crimes, one being the disappearance of Evelyn Harley in La Crosse, but Gein had an alibi. He was working for a neighbor, but in the meantime, they checked her dental records against the 10 heads found in his house. They're like, let's just double check. Now, it was unlikely that Gein had anything to do with her disappearance. He was asked about his involvement in the deaths of two sisters named the Grimes, that was their last names, and a woman named Judith Anderson, who was butchered, and 3 young boys that were killed in Illinois in 1955. But he said he hadn't even been anywhere but Milwaukee, and that was in 1942 when he tried to join the Army.
Oh, right.
Now, Mary Hogan's disappearance was a different story. The press had released that Gein had a bunch of guns, including a .32 caliber pistol at his home. And at the time, what they knew about Mary's death was that she had been shot with a .32 caliber pistol. He denied knowing her, even though he admitted to being in her tavern. And then there was I don't know, her fucking face covered in oil in his house. But hey, what do I know? What do I know? They just found this woman's face in a bag, my guy.
But I don't know.
I don't
know her.
She wasn't dead prior, like the other women you claim that you dug up in the graveyards that you knew, that you saw in the obituaries. Mary Hogan wasn't dead.
Yeah, that don't make sense. Yeah, that makes sense, homeboy.
Pedo-like. So they plan to have a polygraph test done because they didn't know if the answers were really true or not, and the village of Plainsfield was not with the idea of having to dig up a bunch of dead bodies to find out which ones were tampered with. They were like, So
it was like he was digging them up and then reburying the graves?
I guess to kind of like
cover it up.
Yeah,
like...
I mean, and then it's winter. It was probably covered in snow. The ground got hard again. That's the thing. He was just doing 5 years of this shit. Like he was just doing this over and over and over again. And so, which also I would believe if I were a betting man, I would say he probably dug them up when the ground was soft.
Oh, it had to be like it had to have,
and then
happen them like right away almost.
And then probably held on to them, put them back in the ground, covered them up before the first snowfall. That's what I would have did if I was a psycho.
Yeah. Well, and then you also have to you would think you would have to do it when the graves are super fresh. Because you imagine trying to dig up a 6 feet grave by yourself?
Oh, for sure. And that was the other thing too, because I didn't get into it, but there was some speculation that maybe he didn't do it by himself. I'm like, he probably did.
Yeah, he did it by himself.
He had nothing but time, and he did it at night. He was also looking for recently buried people. Yeah. So, I mean, which kind of sucks too, because it's like, damn, didn't nobody visit these people? These people died. These people just died like yesterday, and then nobody visit these graves.
I don't visit graves, so I guess I don't know.
That's true. And then, first of all, if it was probably, excuse me, it was the 40s. There's a likelihood that
we weren't doing 6 feet yet.
Not even that we weren't doing 6 feet, but that it was still a fresh mound of dirt. So all he would have needed to do was, it's going to be fresh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it probably just was like, they probably just didn't suspect it.
That's just gross.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. Now Now, this was a quote. There's no sense going back with a pick and shovel to check the graveyards near Plainfield until we have exhausted the possibilities of the evidence we already have. He acknowledged that some of the body parts recovered from Gein's house contained formaldehyde. Well, okay. Quote, he says, our noses tell us this, but he insisted that the presence of embalming fluid did not in itself prove that Gein was a grave robber. After all, Wilson told the reporters, Gein could have put the fluid there himself, which to me is like, that's bullshit.
This probably didn't happen.
We don't know. Maybe he's an amateur taxidermist. That is where the rumor of Ed Gein being a taxidermist came from, which wasn't true. They didn't find anything stuffed.
Okay.
Like professional. I mean, he had the skill, obviously, of, he was crafty as hell. He probably could have pulled it off.
If he can make a curtain, he can stuff a dog.
Exactly. I mean, and obviously Robert Bloch incorporated that in Psycho. Norman Bates' character was a taxidermist and all this other stuff. But, that part apparently isn't true. But then there was, Mary Hogan's face being in the house. That. We can always go back to that.
Like, I mean,
now, Jesus. Now
clearly.
The deputies had a count of 15 women, 10 faces, 1 head, which was Warden's, and 4 noses. But there were more noses than there were faces. So Gein was questioned for 9 hours. It seems this item is from a leg, or probably from 2. Is that sewn in 2 places? He says that's from a person from the grave. What about, he's talking about the leggings.
Yeah.
What about the face masks? When I made those masks, you see, I stuffed them all out with paper so that they wouldn't dry. On the vagina, I did, sprinkle a little salt. Was there a resemblance?
So that's just so gross. Like, you're eating.
No, it wasn't for eating.
Oh,
it's not seasoning for eating.
I was like, he was a cannibal though, but
he wasn't.
Oh, that was never true.
He said he didn't remember eating them.
Okay.
He didn't,
he doesn't remember.
They don't even bring that up again, which tells me he didn't probably.
Okay, that probably means he didn't do it, yeah.
Was there a resemblance in some of the faces to that of your mother? I believe there was some. Do you have any recollection, Eddie, of taking any of those female parts, the vagina specifically, and holding it over your penis to cover the penis? I believe that's true.
Okay.
You recall doing that with the vaginas of the bodies of other women? That I believe I do remember. That's right. Would you ever put on a pair of women's panties over your body and then put some of these vaginas over your penis? That could be. Would you open the entire casket or just one of the halves? Just the half. And slip them out? That's right. And what section of the flesh would you remove? The head. The head? How about the vagina? Eddie seemed a little flustered. Well, not always. And removing the head, did you first cut through and then snap the bone? I guess that would be snapping. His answers are just so...
I'm like, they're so fast. They're not...
there's no worry. It's like, this is just what
I guess. But he's also not... It doesn't seem like he's answering indefinite. So he's very much like, I guess that could... I mean, it's almost like they're leading... it's one of those things where they're setting up the confession.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I mean, he kind of is being led, but he's still just being like, I guess that's right. I guess that's true. Because a person who's not guilty, like, hell no, and absolutely not, and ain't no way, and ever.
Well, but I mean, there are tons of cases of false confessions.
That's true, and people and also just people who like to lie and say that they did stuff,
and they actually didn't.
Yeah. Now, Ed admitted that he wore the skin masks. He admitted that he wore the breast vest and the skin leggings, and that he covered his penis and vulvas. Quote, then decked out from top to bottom in his corpse costume, a cross-dresser who derived his pleasure not from donning women's clothes, but from wearing their skin and hair. He would parade about the cobwebbed rooms of his house, or on warmer nights strut about in the moonlight.
Okay.
End quote. He admitted to sawing the skulls and turning them into bowls, which were from a Norwegian style of drinking. He read about that. He told how he used salt to preserve the vulvas, but they would turn green anyway. So he painted one silver to see if the silver would help stop the decaying. I don't know. I got nothing. I didn't look that up if silver is known for this.
I
know silver tarnishes.
He doesn't need to make sense, actually.
He doesn't. Now, this was just a hilarious. Now, quote, from time to time during the interrogation, Eddie complained of hunger and asked for something to eat. At one point, he was presented with a slice of apple pie topped with a chunk of Wisconsin cheddar. Now, this is what's crazy because my granny used to eat cheese and cookies, and I thought that was strange.
So I like was she eating like
Lorna Doones
and then what, ginger snaps?
No, Lorna Doone, the shortbread cookie, the ones that you buy.
Yeah.
And then she would get a thick slice of cheddar cheese and eat them shits together like a lunch, like a charcuterie. And I guess it's the sweet and the savory.
That makes sense. I mean, ginger snap. I do it with ginger snaps and cheese.
That's interesting.
Like, I mean, I got it from Pearl, which is maybe it's a
Southern thing.
Yeah,
I guess that's true. I don't know. I can't make it make sense. I used to dip my fries in Frosties at Wendy's. That's about it.
I know people do that still.
That's fire though. That will always be delicious.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I know people do fries and milkshakes.
For sure, 100. And even though it's cold, I hate cold fries, but if you dip it in some ice cream, I'm maxing. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
So anyway, he munched on his snack while continuing to answer Wilimowski's questions. Apparently, however, the food did not come up to Eddie's finicky standards, interrupting his tale of body snatching and corpse flaying and flesh wearing. The little man who ate his soup from skull caps and kept a shoebox full of salted vaginas turned to his interrogator and began to fuss about the dryness of the cheese.
Like, well, actually, I mean, they do live in Wisconsin. I'm sure they're cheese snobs.
Look, seriously, because I love me some Wisconsin cheddar on a burger. I ain't gonna hold you, but
they're like, what? He's like, what is? We're in Wisconsin.
But it's like, bro, you just had salted coochies in a box. you telling me you a cheese connoisseur? You are from, what do they call them in French? Fromage something, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't know.
So after the lie detector test was completed, it was confirmed that Gein killed Mary Hogan and Bernice Warden. But, quote, we are able to, at this time, state that the result of the test referred to eliminate the subject, Edward, 51 years, as the person responsible for and or involved in the disappearance of Evelyn Hartley in La Crosse on October 24th, 1953, the disappearance of Georgia Jean Weckler in Jefferson County, May 1st, 1947, and Victor Travis in Adams County, November 1st, 1952. So basically they say he didn't do them other ones, but he did these two. I don't think he would
kill a man anyway.
Yeah, exactly. He's trying to kill people that look like his mother.
Yeah, or just women that he can wear. He wants to be a woman. It sounds like
he wants to be his mother. He wants to wear parts that make him appear like his mother. Now, with this, they had planned to file for first-degree murder, but D.A. Killeen had also intended to ask the court for a sanity hearing. Ed's attorney, William Belter, was planning on pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. Ed agreed, of course. Quote, there were lots of things that Eddie was still hazy about, and it was obvious to everyone who came into contact with Eddie, his defense attorney included, that one of the things Gein was most glaringly hazy about was the sheer magnitude of his crimes. Gein exhibited no awareness at all of their enormity. He couldn't have been any more nonchalant about them if they had consisted of a string of parking tickets. As Belter, displaying a real skill of understatement, later said of his client, I don't think he was a full appreciation of what he had done.
Which is true insanity. It
is. Now, psychologically, they believe Gein suffered from an Oedipus complex, which if you don't know that's a Freudian theory. It's the complex of emotions aroused in a young child, typically around the age of 4, by an unconscious sexual desire for the parent of the opposite sex, and which is to exclude the parent of the same sex. So a boy in love with his mother versus a boy in love with his father. But the term for the girl who's in love with her father, yes. The girl who's loving her father, yes. Okay, I got confused. It's called the Electra complex. So there's the Oedipus complex and the Electra complex. Now, which accounted for the women's parts and the killing of the two women that looked like his mother. They were like,
it makes sense.
Now, he had an unhealthy attachment to his mother, and this could have led to his, quote, feminine attitudes. He wanted to be a woman. He wanted to be a woman instead of a man. And he wondered if it was possible to change his sex or to even perform the change on himself.
Which is interesting because his mom thought all women were like sin-filled, evil people. So like the fact that he wanted to be his mother and it's kind of interesting.
Well, his mother was perfect. That was the only woman
that was perfect.
Yeah.
So
Now, when his mother passed away, he was depressed. And 2 years later, in 1947, that's when he began digging up the graves. But that wasn't enough. So when he saw that Hogan resembled his mother, he knew he had to have her. So he, quote, returned to the tavern, shot Mrs. Hogan through the back of the head with a .32 caliber Mauser, loaded her 200-pound body into his truck, drove home, hoisted her up by her heels with a pulley arrangement in the summer kitchen where his parents had once slaughtered hogs and butchered her body with a homemade knife fashioned from a file. Several years later, he repeated the atrocity with Bernice Warden, another local businesswoman who strongly reminded Ed Gein of his own hefty, strong-willed, dear departed mommy.
That makes sense. Both women not only physically resembled, but they also had that same businesswoman-y.
Which, you know, there's a part of the book, and I didn't include it in my summary, that I also found very interesting, that I am one of those people who do not believe that women should raise children by themselves at all. Because women have the tendency to make specifically boys, not always girls, but specifically boys, either to this or to fucking that. And the fact that she has such a weak-willed husband who did not to say he should hit her or abuse her or do anything like that.
We did hit her and abuse her, actually.
He did. So. He actually did. But not to say that he should or that was appropriate at all. But to be there to help guide his sons into manhood.
Well, he wasn't a man.
At all. Which obviously is what Augusta needed in order to maintain some level of control, because she herself obviously didn't trust him to be able to do it, so she did it. And I feel like in today's society we're starting to see where this breakup of the home, the fact that there are so many men missing from the home, is turning into a problem. You got too many women raising men alone. Sorry. And in a patriarchal society where we, unfortunately have been forced to rely on men who, no disrespect to you, but who at the end of the day are not emotionally intelligent enough to do shit. I just had this conversation with you
the other day,
because you're just not built to do it.
This shitty ass person.
I follow, I follow the woman, what's her name on TikTok, Princella, the queen maker or whatever, who.
I don't know.
Anyway, I like her. She's a lot, but I do like her because she has a lot of valid points. And one of the things she talked about is kind of like what me and Kira talked about on one of the episodes where we were saying like men are the gatekeepers to other men.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So her thing was we are in this patriarchal society where not enough men are stepping in to train men to be men. So, and it's like you can have a dude who's got all of these male friends who he loves to be around, that constantly validate him, that never tell him how shitty he is, right?
Yep.
And he loves being around those guys because they only allow him to be shitty.
Yeah.
Right? He never gets judged. He never gets told, don't do that or don't be that way or nothing. But if you had more men, especially in we can take the extreme version from that friend who is always forcing women to do things, or who's a sexual fucking deviant who always touches women at the club, or that friend that beats all his girlfriends. I had that conversation with one of my friends who I knew through my ex when I was like, but you all knew he was a piece of shit.
I mean, you know, it's somewhere like as simple as like men not taking care of their kids and you hanging out with a man that doesn't take care of their. So we can even take the abuse out, but like you just
right. On the simplest level
thing of like you don't take care of your children. Like I couldn't be friends with a man that did not take care of his children.
Men listen to other men. They don't listen to women.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just really what men are so engaged in man shit that they only listen to other men. And that's why it's important for other men to check men.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
It shouldn't be up to us to check. One, it typically
they don't want to listen.
They don't listen to us. We're usually the ones that's kind of right about what they're doing, but it also a lot of the times puts us in danger.
Yeah.
You tell a guy at the club, why are you touching her like that?
Yeah.
As a woman? That's a different thing.
When it comes off different, because now it's like, what do you mean? Like, why are you
being
When a dude is kind of like, gee, like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
Like, what you doing?
I know what it was. It was the episode me and Kira did on the duct tape killer, where we were like, why is this man so comfortably talking about taping up his coworker to his friends, and his friends are just like, you a wild boy. No, he's not wild. He's a psycho.
He's a sociopath.
So that's where I feel this is why I'm saying that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Men have to train other men to be men. The same reason why women have to train other women to be women.
Yeah.
So when you see Ed Gein's mom, who is clearly a psychopath herself.
She got some issues.
Whose religious piety had just took over her brain. She was indoctrinated. And you would have needed the father to step in and be like, Augusta, okay, baby girl, take a back seat on this one. But he was weak. Yeah. So she had free reign over her kids to treat them anyway, to teach them whatever. And at the end of the day, I just don't have the fiber. Like, don't matter how tomboy I can be, no matter how many rap songs I know, don't matter how many video games I've played, I cannot teach you how to be a man. I just can't.
No, I agree. And I mean, that's not saying anything to single mothers, but like, it's one of those things where you have to, especially if you have boys, I think you have to give them that positive male influence in some way. So if it's not the dad, it's got to be somebody. Somewhere you have to give them. Yeah. And I think that's why you have a lot of those programs, like those Big Brother programs, or maybe you have an uncle, or where you have to kind of
they need a mentor.
They need a mentor of some sort.
Yeah, and positive one. So anyway, I say that's what I mean when I say that I don't think that women should raise boys alone, because at the end of the day, we do not have the wiring to teach him how to move through society. If we teach him to be too emotional, it's going to be a problem. Yeah. We teach him to be too unemotional, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, and it sucks. And societally, it sucks because, like you said, like you teach them to be too emotional or too non-emotional, and you need that balance, right? Yeah. Especially as a man, because you have to, unfortunately, be able to balance out what is perceived as too emotional as a man, and
but that's why two parent homes make
so much sense,
because at the end of the day, I don't think a man can just raise his sons and teach them how to be a man, but he may also raise them to be chauvinistic pieces of shit because he's a chauvinistic piece of shit. You know what I mean? So it depends. But if you have a woman there that can kind of like balance,
because you learn how to treat a woman by the way you treat your mom, the way you see your mom being treated.
Absolutely,
I think in the beginning,
absolutely.
And those interactions in the household. Like,
absolutely. And I think Ed Gein just didn't have a chance.
Not at all.
He did not have a chance.
I mean, his dad was a nothing piece of shit. His mom was a abused, turned in
religious freak.
Yeah, like they're both kind of pieces of shit.
They were. Now, one psychiatrist thought that Gein was a schizophrenic, and he had conflicting feelings about his mom. Like, he loved and hated her at the same time. So why did he just treat these women like this? Likely because of the sexual attitudes that Augusta had instilled in him about modern women, because she was more in like the traditional sense. Now, Gein had told his questioners about his mother's views. He was like, she was one of those people, she thought that all women had the devil in them. And we know, this is what Dr. Edward Keller said, that whenever a mother hammers away at an abnormal attitude towards other women, it will affect her children. Yep. The result of Gein's abnormal conflicted feelings for his mother, according to Keller, was a cluster of symptoms unparalleled in the annals of sexual psychopathology, a sickness combining acute forms of transvesticism, fetishism, which is the disordered love of non-living objects, and then the ghastliness of necrophilia, which is the love of the dead. Now, Gein did feel bad, and he was sorry for his crimes and the pain that he inflicted on other people, but he remained pretty even-tempered and good-mannered. I mean, he was quiet, he was shy.
That's how he was raised.
That was just how he was raised. But the weird thing with was him displaying a little too much elation, either because of the attention that he was getting or just the fact that he was finally telling the truth. And he, there's that euphoria that people get, that relief. Now, Gein's initial confession was thrown out because Sheriff Art Schley had assaulted Gein during the first round of questioning. Either way, on November 21st, 1957, Gein was arraigned on one count of first-degree murder. He was found unfit to stand trial and was sent to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane in Walpoon, Wisconsin. Then he was transferred to Mendota State Hospital in Madison. Now, Gein would stand trial. Keep saying Gein. Gein would stand trial again in November of 1968, which lasted just 1 week. He was found guilty of first-degree murder for just Warden's death because they felt like it was just too costly to try Hogan's death.
I just feel like he was clearly in that, and I know the insanity defense is a really hard one to actually pull off, but like this dude was clearly nuts.
But he was, to them, they were like, he's still legally insane and he's still going to spend his life in a mental institution. So to try the Hogan thing, they were like, we're not going to do it. Because what they also knew was that, okay, yes, we found her face in his house. It would take more investigating and more lab tests. They didn't want to do the criminal stuff. They didn't want to do any of that part. What they knew was that he was going to go away because of Warden.
Yeah.
We can win that one. Open and shut.
And he's going to go to jail.
He's going to go to jail. Now, and I know sometimes families and stuff like that. Now, they didn't really mention Hogan's family. She was originally from here. They didn't really mention how Hogan's family felt. At least I don't remember seeing it about how Hogan's family felt about all of this, because they didn't really acknowledge her family. But in delivering this decision, the judge, Goldmar, he rejected Gein's contention that the killing was accidental, noting, among other things, that Gein's actions, quote, immediately after
hang somebody from the ceiling,
after the shooting, cast a certain degree of doubt on that particular excuse. Instead of behaving the way most people would have if they shot somebody accidentally, which is by rushing into the street and trying to get a doctor, Gein, Goldmar explained, loaded the body into a truck, then into his car. And while he testified he had no personal recollection of dissecting the body, I think there could be no question that this was done by the defendant and that he hung her up in his woodshed. This line of conduct, Goldmar concluded, does not fit with an accidental shooting.
Not even slightly.
After listening to their testimony, Judge Goldmar delivered his decision. The court does find on November 16, 1957, the defendant, Edward Gein, was suffering from a mental disease. The court does further find that as a result of his mental disease, he lacked substantial capacity to conform his conduct to the requirements of the law, and the court does therefore find the defendant not guilty by reason of insanity. Now, Gein died in Mendota Mental Health Institute of respiratory failure, but he didn't die until July 26, 1984.
Wow.
He was 77. His house was burned down in 1958. When Gein heard about it, he was like, just as well.
I mean,
his car was eventually sold to a carnival show so people could pay to see it.
Cool.
His gravestone was stolen in 2000 and eventually recovered in Seattle. And now it's supposed to be at the Waushara County Historical Society Museum, which used to be the Washoe County Jail in Watoma, but they decided not to display it because it's in Wisconsin because they felt it was too controversial. His grave is at the Plainfield Cemetery in Wisconsin, but it's unmarked. It's between his brother and his mother. Now, here's a joke. Here's a joke for the road. Why did they have to keep the heat on in Ed Gein's house? So the furniture wouldn't get goosebumps. Zing!
Oh,
I hate people. There were so many. The author listed a bunch of jokes that people.
Well, because that's a good one, actually. I don't know if we should find things like that funny, but
it's not. But it is. It's funny. So that is the story of Mr. Ed Gein.
Wow, I think he's actually scarier than all of the movies that he inspired.
Well, the true story. Well, and that was the thing too. They were like, there isn't any amount of fiction that could make it that is more strange than the truth.
Yeah.
Like, it's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just weird. It's a lot. It's just, that 70s, 80s, just almost exploitative horror. It's just gnarly. But to think of like this odd man doing this for this long
it's
is
it's the making of all of the curtains with the lips and it's one thing
the resourcefulness of it all.
You made a whole bodysuit, you made furniture, you were like, I'm not that impressed with the bowls out of the skulls.
That's simple.
I could do that. Actually.
Vampires do that. If vampires were real, they would do that. But like the nipple belts, the lampshade, which he also got from Nazis, because the bitch of Buchenwald was making the lampshades. She was making all that stuff out of the skin, which is like.
But
evil.
see, like I feel like right, so she was able to do it probably undisturbed. Nobody but like and probably in the open for the most part.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
He was doing it like
in his dirty ass house, disgusting house. Which is wild because he was like kids were there. But then again, think about it. He really only killed 2 people.
Yeah.
Well, other than all of the bodies that he had just like haphazardly tossed around in mounds of junk.
That's why he was so strong, digging out graves.
Well,
that has to be good cardio.
You got to have a strong back.
I was like, there got to be some good cardio and some arms and some back going on there.
That's a lot, yeah. So...
Well,
yeah, it's like I don't even know. But yes, go watch Psycho.
Oh,
and then go
watch. I'm gonna watch Psycho and then
Rear Window.
The Rear Window.
Yes, please go watch
that sounds
those.
like my weekend this weekend.
Best for sure. And then I'll probably watch Psycho when you leave. But go follow me on all your stuff. Sting Like a Bee on TikTok. Lavender Bordeaux on Instagram. Swear to Drunk Podcast on Instagram as well. If you don't want to follow me personally, you don't have to.
But you should.
Dustin.
Arrogantly Humble 86.
Okay.
I actually don't know my TikTok, but you can go follow it.
I was about to say, isn't it the same?
It might be actually.
And so I whatever. I'm not gonna say I hope you enjoyed it because I know you probably didn't. But
unless you're a sicko, I enjoyed it.
You're like, but I actually did. I enjoyed it because I learned from it because I realized that there was a lot about Ed Gein that I didn't really know. Yeah. So I will also say go if you have MGM Plus, or I think Paramount and MGM are on the same whatever.
I think so.
But if you do, go check out the Lost Tapes of Ed Gein. Is very interesting too. He is so very mild mannered and he is so nonchalant when he's talking about this stuff. It's actually pretty. It's it's like you sometimes when you listen to tapes of serial killers and they sound just so confident and they're like this, like who's the other one, like Ed Kemper. Or anybody like that who's just like very sure of himself. Yeah. Or then sometimes you hear the ones that are just like weird, but he's just like, I was just,
a little country.
You know what I mean?
He just kind of little. a little dairy farm kid that just,
and it's, I mean, he's just, it's just like one of those things. You're like, I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't quite expecting for him to sound like a normal person. So it was a very interesting watch. So I definitely recommend that. And if you want to go and read the book, go do that too. It was called something, and I don't remember what it was called now.
But it'll be linked.
It'll be Deviant, and it will be linked. So, all right. I will see you all in a couple of weeks. And anything else? We done?
No, I think we're done there.
All right. Love y'all. Mean it. Bye.